All right, hello and welcome everybody. Super pumped to be here. You're listening to Honest to God on AM 1160 The Quest, Atlanta's Catholic Radio. This is episode, what number are we on, Ben?
This is the 43rd.
The 430th episode of Honest to God.
The 430th
is
episode
wild.
of Honest to God.
It has been a wild 9.5 years here.
Yep,
at
absolutely.
Honest to God.
Yep.
Yeah, but we're super pumped. We got a great crew today. We got Rick, R-I-K.
No, we're going to go with Abe.
Abe. I'm sorry.
Rick was on the other episode.
That's so embarrassing that I got your name
You
wrong.
know we
Abe.
don't reuse people.
Okay.
Come on.
Abe, which is not short for anything. That's legal name. Abe.
Yeah, legal.
Okay,
Legal.
first, last, middle. Great.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
all three.
Perfect. We got Teresa. We have Father Martin Connor. And then we got Patrick. Patrick and Abe, they're old pros. They've been on the show before. Teresa and Father, you guys are new. So you owe us 5 fun facts. And then Abe and Patrick, just give us one. So we'll get started with you right after we pray. Father, would you mind leading us in prayer?
Absolutely. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we ask you to open our hearts and minds to the theme for this session and this episode, which is dating and just the responsibility and the importance of this theme and unpacking it and understanding it in some very difficult times that God has called us to live in. We pray for our young people. We pray for all the marriages out there, all those who are discerning marriage, that they may really be open and seek your light to make the right choices and decisions. And we ask this always through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. In the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Awesome, Father. Thank you so much. Abe, kick us off. What you got?
First fun fact for the day. Do you know the little cylinders, little cans that the Pillsbury like biscuits and such
Yeah,
come
big
in?
supporter
Dude,
of the wampum cans. We always call them wampum cans.
Don't like them. Not gonna lie. Popping
don't like
those
'em?
open, it feels like I'm holding on to like a pipe bomb, ready to go off. Like
I mean, I think technically they are
something-
pipe bombs. They're just really...
That's what I mean. It's like something primal in me goes, this isn't going to go well. As I'm sitting there twisting a pipe bomb in my hands.
See, I like them for the exact
Not a
opposite
fan.
reason. I love you peel that the cardboard off, and then you whomp them on the corner
Just
of
like
your...
punch them as hard as you
Yeah,
can.
and they
Pipe
pop
bomb.
open. That's cool.
So if anybody's ever over and I ask you to open up one of those, just know I'm handing you a pipe bomb. It's
Well, that
Not
makes this
bad.
awkward because this episode of Honest to God is brought to you by Wampum Biscuits. Regardless of what company makes them, Wampum Biscuits. Are they pipe bombs? Probably. Wampum Biscuits. Check them out in the supermarket near you. Awesome, Teresa. You got 5 for us?
I do. So, I guess my first fun fact is that I'm the oldest of 3. I have 2 younger brothers. And then my second fun fact is, I don't know if you heard, but there was like this big Masters tournament recently.
I did hear.
And so I have, what do you call it? I am originally from Augusta. I was born and raised there. And I only came to the Kennesaw Atlanta area for school. So
Were you part of the Alleluia community out there?
I know people from there,
Okay.
but I have not been a part of it.
Cool.
So, but I'm very familiar with the community and just know people in it.
Yeah,
so.
that's awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then my kind of going to the more, I guess, random fun facts. I can do an Irish jig. I took Irish dancing lessons for a couple of years.
Heck yeah.
So I still remember how to do that. And then was that 4?
Sure.
4? No, the next one is that I have a dual citizenship. My mom's Polish, so look at that.
Yeah, we
I'm
have
dual citizen Polish too.
we have twice as many Polish citizens on the show this week than any week previously. It's
Any.
huge.
It's
We've
crazy.
doubled our Polish citizens. Yeah, just
We're
today.
rising in numbers.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
So I can vote there and here.
Do you vote there?
I haven't yet. I've been there during an election, but at that time I was 8, so
Right. Oh.
the legal age for voting is 18. So
That's super cool.
I was a
We're
little-
big fans of the Poles.
yeah, it's a great country. I would recommend if anybody wants to go on a pilgrimage. I mean, Holy Land I heard is really good, and I also recommend going to Poland because I've been to the Divine Mercy, to Czestochowa, beautiful spots, a lot of
Heck yeah.
great Catholic faith devotions there. So
That is awesome, Teresa.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, welcome. We're excited.
Nice.
And now, Father, I think your first fun fact is a video that we're going to show right now talking about your new book, right?
Yep. Are we going to roll it or
Let's roll it.
let's roll it?
As of late, 270 million adults use dating apps worldwide to find love and fulfillment. And yet social ills like depression and anxiety and loneliness Even thoughts of suicide are only increasing. People are settling for any kind of love that they can get. We as human beings know that love is important for our happiness, and yet we are settling for simply any kind of love. People are entering the dating world not even fully knowing themselves and the kind of love that they aspire to, that they are really made for. This disconnect here is that we are made for self-gift love, not immediate gratification love. Self-gift love, or the gift of self to another, is the love that we truly yearn for. This is the only love that will fulfill our human hearts. Yet this love challenges us, it stretches us, and therefore it demands investment. This kind of love is not immediate. It takes time. It matures with sacrifice. Over the last years, myself and a team of young adults from college age well into their young professional years collaborated together to create this dating booklet. This booklet offers a pathway to equip young adults in navigating the digital dating world with confidence. It proposes solid practical guidelines on how to foster self-gift love through self-knowledge. We live in a world today where people actually believe that they're not worthy of this love. They don't even deserve it. And therefore, they opt for the ugliest form of love. And they're feeling the miserable effects of it. We, the collaborators and myself, want to tell you that that's a lie. You are worthy of it. You are wired for it. And we want to help you seek it and find it. We want to help you find the love of your hearts.
There you go. That was it. He'll edit that in later.
Perfect.
That's awesome. So that unfortunately does only count for one, but we are going to ask you to talk a lot more about that book in a minute when we move forward in the show. So you got 4 more for us?
Yes, let's see here. I have 5 older sisters. I was born and raised outside of Annapolis, where the United States Naval Academy is. Lived about 10 minutes from there growing up. I have there's another priest in my family. My younger brother is also ordained priest.
Just 2 boys in your family?
There's 3. The last 2 of 8 are priests, and we're actually members of the same community. So how about that? Ordained on the same day.
Wow.
That's really cool. Now, but you guys don't beat the Hopkins brothers for...
We don't.
for
There were
priests.
3, and on the same day, we're only 2.
Yeah, that's still pretty cool, though.
And they were ordained by a saint, St. John Paul II.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
That was a triple threat there on that day.
Heck yeah.
What else? How many is that? That must be close to 5.
Well, let me check with the void over here.
There's
Shino's Vinny
okay.
says 3.
I studied German and speak fluent German.
Nice.
For many, many years. Studied in high school and college. And I got into college for tennis. I was recruited for tennis.
Do you still play?
A little bit, not as much.
That's awesome. I really like the idea of playing tennis. So we're pretty much the same in that regard.
Hopefully we get out there and act on that idea. Right?
I've played it. I'm not very good at it, but I really like the idea.
Yeah, it's a great sport.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Patrick, what you got? You just owe us one.
Yeah, I recently launched my podcast, just Holy Seven. So I have conversation with local Catholic creatives. Well, Catholic creatives from anywhere. So there's 2 episodes right now. One with Emily Jeffries.
Yeah,
she's
awesome.
was recently written a fantasy book, and with this guy named Jason Eaton, where we talked about mythology through like a classic philosophical lens. So.
Cool. And what's it called? Holy Seven?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's Holy Seven with the 7 with Roman numerals, so VII.
We will put a link in the description. That sounds awesome. I know Emily Jeffries well. I worked with her for a while.
Yeah, it was a great that was a good episode to start off with.
Yeah, she's awesome. All right, well, that is fantastic. Thank you guys again for being here. I want to kick it off. Do you have something to say, Ben? Oh, no, Ben's just worried
I
about
was just
cameras.
I was working on cameras.
Yeah, we got to make sure all of Patrick's face is on there. So I'd love to kick it off right now and just kind of open this up. You know, believe it or not, I don't do a ton of prep work before the show, which is why we bring on experts like all of you people to talk about these topics. And today we're talking about dating, which is something that we haven't addressed directly. I don't think we have.
We've talked about dating apps. We've talked about like what people are looking for in opposite genders, but
Talking
not
about emotional chastity.
specifically. Yeah, we've talked about the aspects of dating, but not dating.
Yeah, and I want to open it up to Father, who has just written a book on this, despite the fact that he is absolutely not dating right now.
That's a really good point to mention.
So can you tell us about, before you talk about the book itself, I'd love to know why you wrote the book to begin with.
Yeah, so as I mentioned prior to the show, I had written a book 2 years before the dating booklet on emotional chastity. Mm-hmm. And it's called Reclaiming Love. And that was kind of the culmination of 5 years of study. I have graduated with a certification degree in the theology of the body from Philadelphia, the institute up there. And you have to do a lot of studying and a lot of teaching in order to graduate from there. And you are asked to do a 2-hour teaching on any theme you want.
Cool. And
the theme that I picked was emotional chastity. So in order to prepare that, I interviewed about 100 people. That's why it took me so many years to do it. And it was single people, engaged people, married people. So I had a lot of data, a lot of feedback on a lot of different themes besides emotional chastity, which was a book on self-gift love, but kind of the healthy place of your emotions in self-gift, the total gift of yourself in love. So from that really was the beginnings of this dating booklet, because so much of what I interviewed people about was their love life, mm-hmm. and how that plays out in their own life, be it with another person, maybe even a family member, just the kind of the phenomena of love. So the dating booklet really was probably from that. It really came from a conversation I had with a young woman who had been involved in our lay movement for many, many years, and she had moved away and came back and asked me to speak to her. And this was right before COVID, and we were just chatting, having a cup of coffee. We went into this amazing conversation about guys, girls, and the whole reality of dating. And at the end of it, she said, "You know what? We should write a book about this." And I had just finished my book, and I wasn't really interested. And she came back to me literally within a week with an outline of the book.
Awesome.
Which was kind of a confirmation from, well, maybe I need to be open to this. So right. Myself and about 10 or 15 young adults really put this together. It wasn't Father Martin locked in a dark room as a priest trying to thinking out someone's love life. It wasn't that. It literally was the feedback of a lot of young people from 18, 19 years old all the way into well into their 30s, trying to navigate some difficult times to meet the right person for their lives. So that's kind of the content of the book. And then secondly, really, it's not written for the religious audience.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It's written for the seeker. So anyone who's listening to this or watching this or whatever, know that you can pick it up and give it to someone who is not religiously, say, prone, mm-hmm. but who's just trying to figure life out and try to figure out life and love out. And so that's what I wrote it for, because that's really what we're dealing with. Most of us are dealing with. We interact with people constantly, day in and day out, in school or work, who are not there with God and maybe even further away, and are just trying to find meaning and purpose in their relationships. Well,
it's so interesting too. This is something I talk about a lot with high school kids, right? How truth is truth, whether you believe it or not, right? And so those things that are true and good and beautiful and are going to speak to us, regardless of whether you start talking about the reason it's true and good and beautiful is because it's rooted in God, right? It's rooted in virtue and all these things. It's still excellent advice, even when you take away the religious aspects of it. That's right. So that's really cool. That's great. So those of you, are any of you married? No? Okay, cool. So I am totally, I'm getting a nod from the void over there.
The void is married?
Shonos Benny may or may not be married, and he may or may not exist. I know.
Yeah.
You never know. So I want to sort of recuse myself from a little bit of this, because I have no idea what the dating landscape looks like. I don't know what the rules are. The last time I had a new girlfriend, I was 19 years old. She's currently pregnant with my 5th child, right? We got married before the children came, right? But I'm just curious about general experiences and what it's like out there right now. And I don't even know what dating means. I was having a conversation with some young people not too long ago, and the way they were describing their romantic relationships and stuff was so alien to even myself, 15 years ago out in that world. So what does that look like? What are just any feedback on that?
Yeah, I think really just bouncing off of that, I'll say the whole scene going out into the world, into public, it's probably very different from what you experienced way back when you were 19. That was a really long time. You had abacuses back then. So, it's very different. And I'll speak from the guy side since I am, funny enough, a guy.
Yeah.
But going out and trying to meet people, and I don't want to, you're not trying to date everybody, but trying to introduce yourself to people, get to know people, it's very different. And I'll say it's a rocky road just because with all this new social media and how people interact with one another nowadays, it's way different from what my parents went through, my grandparents went through. You can't exactly go up to somebody, say, hey, you look halfway decent. I want to get to know you.
Why can't Abe find a girlfriend? Going out to DM.
Exactly. Yeah, let's not talk about that. But yeah, going out and you can't exactly approach people as it was done in past. You know, it's all these dating apps, it's all these social media apps.
But why? Why do the dating apps and all those things prevent you from being able to do that? I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm curious.
I think it's just the thought process that people go into meeting people in public. You know, it's not that instantaneous flow of knowledge of who a person is. You can't scroll back to, you know, their Instagram, Facebook post that was from 2015 and figure out, all right, cool, you went to the same, you know, high school, college as me. You know, you actually have to get to know somebody. And I think that having those conversations and actually taking the second to delve deep with somebody, it scares most people. You know, a lot of people nowadays aren't really built for conversation. You know, they'd rather just kind of sit in a corner and be in their own world instead of being with the people around them. So I think that's kind of one of the factors that builds into it being so difficult and so different from how it used to be.
Sure. I mean, that sounds super depressing, but I don't think that I don't think it necessarily is, right? Patrick or Teresa, like, what are your thoughts?
I think, like, still, because I'm still currently, like, in college, so, like, I see a lot of, like, my friends and, like, you know, everything, the whole dating, and it's like, oh, like, in my view, like, oh, like, is college the place that I want to, like, date someone just because of, you know, certain factors? I think it's, like, what you were saying, like, about social media. I think for a lot of people, like, it is just that safer spot that we're so used to already just scrolling through everything, like, just, you know, we tend to look at people based on their, like, social media profile. Mm-hmm. And, like, I think for us, it's easier to just look at that and be like, oh, yeah, instead of, like, already comparing ourselves to see if we're compatible with them or not, just because what they put in their bio.
Is that necessarily a bad thing?
I feel like it could be, like, it can be a good thing or a bad thing. You could avoid something, but you also don't know, because one person can appear to be, like, have all these similar characteristics online, and then in person they can be completely different. Sure. I can kind of go, I mean, okay, I didn't think I would date this person, but there was in high school, so just some brief context, like, I didn't go to public school, I was homeschool. Mm-hmm. And we had my homeschool program did this thing where we could like, look at people's profile on the like, you know, from other students who did the same program. Okay. And it ended up where I found out that this one person who was the same class that I was, we were going to end up in the same school after graduation. So I was like, okay. And we were talking already beforehand, and, like, on his profile, he seemed to, like, have, like, all these characteristics that I were like, okay, I could see myself maybe dating this guy. Like, he seems like someone, you know, we could connect with. But then we only had, like, messaging, like, contact, like, you know, DMs, I guess you would call it. It wasn't, like, on Instagram or anything. But then afterwards, I met in person, and, like, he did have some of the things that were based on his profile on the school messaging thing that we had, but he wasn't I already created an image of him, like, based on his profile, that it didn't match up, like, who he was in person. Not saying, like, he didn't have anything, but it just wasn't identical. Mm-hmm. So, like, when I got to know him in person, I was like, okay, maybe he's actually not the guy that I'm looking for, like, in a potential spouse. And, you know, I don't know, and we never expressed any feelings for each other or anything like that, but just, like, if I ever was even interested, like, that was kind of stopped at, like, in person. So I feel like meeting someone like, in person, you kind of, most of the time you see them face value, and then you can kind of slowly, like, if they reveal, and then if they're truthful, they kind of are showing who they are, and you get to see it, like, in real life.
It's a lot harder to pretend who you are in person than it is online.
Yeah, sure. But so here's my thing. So my knee-jerk reaction is, like, and we talked about this a little bit in the dating app, my just immediate reaction is dating apps bad, online dating bad, but I don't know if I can articulate why I think that is. And I think I drew this distinction too on that episode. I know so many people from, I mean, these are my grandparents' generation though, but where they met somebody a half dozen times and they exchanged letters over the course of a year, right? And then they got engaged. And I'm trying to figure out what the distinction is and if there is one, but what I don't want to say is that the norm throughout human history has been, I'm going to declare a romantic intention for this other person, and I'm going to spend a ton of time with them and go all these places with them, and then I'm going to propose to them. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong, but that's the thought process in my head. I think that I don't want to immediately write off online stuff just because it's online and newfangled. Y'all have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of, I guess you can say, a problem is that if you look at it this way, that the power structure is a little imbalanced in that right now the complete scene is controlled by women, right? Like, I would say that a dating app is kind of almost like women have more control than any guy in a way.
Okay.
And that, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that decide, like, whether, like, I feel like guys swipe through, like, women are like more willing than not to meet most of them, where girls tend to be a little more picky,
right?
But it's but then there's this like development process as a guy to have to walk up to somebody and kind of state your intention, right? So in a way it almost like not to the extreme, but like where if you look at the extremes, I guess it's visible like there, if you could say that, is that it kind of feminizes men in a way, but then it like gives women way too much power over the scene in general. And I think that's
super interesting. Okay.
And then the second thing I would say is just because of social media and stuff that we're so used to, like carefully crafting our identities on there, that we craft like our potential spouse on there too. So if they don't check every box or something, it's like, well, it's not gonna work out. Whereas where Teresa mentioned earlier, if you meet someone organically, you kind of go through those. It's almost with dating apps, you almost have to pre-date before you actually want to know if you want to date. And then, but if that happens organically, it just kind of have you already at that.
No, that makes
point.
a lot of sense. Father, you literally wrote the book on it. I'm curious about. I'm going to make dumb jokes like that the whole time. I can't help it. But I am curious about your thoughts, particularly on modern dating, if that's what we want to call it, right? And how, I don't know, good, bad, ugly, just big picture stuff. Like, give us a little how-to on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just give you some of the things that kind of motivated myself and kind of my contributors team. And one of them was, the dating world is very impulsive. It's reactionary, right? I like the way she looks. I like the way I like her, his food, whatever that piece of thing I'm looking at on the dating app or whatever, then I react to it. I swipe left or swipe right, right? And what kind of the thesis of the dating booklet is, in order to make right choices, and dating is a really important area of your life to make the right choices, you need to be a man or a woman who's self-reflective.
Okay, sure.
Who's self-aware. And because we live in a culture that is impulsive and is chaotic and is noisy, we are not men and women who reflect deeply. And so that's why literally chapter 1, and I know some of you have already seen the dating quiz.
Right.
It's really trying to gauge the reader to say, hey, where am I in my self-awareness? Where am I in my personal growth right now? Because if dating is about love, then I need to be a loving person, right? And it takes two to tango. We live in a culture that's very transactional in love. So what's in it for me?
Sure.
And so we've basically flipped it around, saying, rather than have me worry about what's in it for me, let's worry about what am I contributing to this relationship? What am I going to give to this relationship? And am I ready to do that?
Right.
Am I ready to deliver on what healthy, mature love looks like?
So, and I want to get a little more into the quiz after we take the break, but I am curious about like what you're finding, right? How do you gauge that in yourself? How can you tell, am I ready to love someone for their own sake? How do you tell, am I self-reflective? How do you do that? That seems like a great advice, and I have no practical understanding of how to do that.
How do you know if you are a person like that?
Well, how do I know if I'm ready to start dating by that metric?
So in the dating quiz, I list out around 6 virtues that are kind of core human building blocks that make for responsible, mature human beings.
Okay.
Right? So, and I just invite everyone to gauge themselves on each of those, depending on the frequency they think that they exhibit that behavior or the lack of, right? And then based on the number that they give themselves, they get a final number. And based on a lot of conversations that I've had, then that number generally is the minimum that you would want in order to begin dating in a healthy way.
Okay.
If you shoot under that, then you probably need to be working on yourself before you bridge out to other relationships.
Why don't we do that? I mean, I can, just as people, right? As a guy who had a number of girlfriends growing up, right? And I didn't realize until I was in my mid-20s that I probably was, and I was married and I had a couple kids at that point. That was probably about the point where I realized, oh, I've been really selfish and self-centered for a long time. And I probably, even though I'm happy in my vocation, right? I'm just now maturing to a point where I feel like, no, I'm capable of being the man I ought to be, right? For my own sake. But why as a culture do we have such a hard time with that? And is that a current problem, or is that a problem that has been exacerbated recently? Or is that just a part of human nature that's always been there?
I think it's always been there, right? I mean, Socrates, to quote philosophy, because I know you teach a little bit of that.
I do a little bit of that.
Says the unexamined life is not worth living.
Well, what does Socrates know? Yeah. Come on.
I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Absolutely.
Right? We do need to think about what's going right in my life, what's not going right in my life, and what I can pull from that, what can I learn from that. That, when we're reflective and we're aware and we kind of own our choices rather than cast the blame on other people, there's maturing that happens in that. And I think we've gotten away from that. I think if anything's new to this culture, it is the chaotic noise in our life. That's probably the one thing you can point to versus any other generation. They've never had to deal with such intensified distraction as we have in this culture. Everything else is pretty much the same. We're the same weak, flawed human beings, right? With the same difficulties and the same life realities. But the fact that our mental space is so limited to think about ourselves, think about the bigger dimensions of life, God, relationships, things that are important, is so reduced in our life. I mean, I read a statistic the other day that a married couple in a given week has approximately 26 minutes to talk to each other about something that's substantial.
Right.
Not about who's going to pick up the kids or what's going to be for dinner tomorrow night, but how are you? How are us? How are we doing?
Right.
26 minutes a week. I mean, just that alone makes you really pause.
Yeah, I was given an assignment by a spiritual director one time. A spiritual director you recommended to me, by the way. Thanks, Father. And he said, I want you to not listen to things on your commute and actually have a moment with yourself. And you can pray and you can talk to God, or you can just be quiet. And it was incredibly difficult. It was really, really hard. Yeah. All right. And we are at time. We're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to get right back into this and keep the ball rolling. So we will be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Dear viewers, you are listening to AM 1160 The Quest, Atlanta's Catholic Radio. This is Honest to God. We'll be right back. All right. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to AM 1160 The Quest, Atlanta's Catholic Radio. This is Honest to God. We're going to start back on our conversation about dating, and we're going to do it. We're going to slowly ease into it. Abe, are you ready to date? Why or why not?
You know what? Honestly, I have no idea.
Every time you say honest, you have to stare at the camera and say to God and then wink.
Honestly, honest. I have no idea.
To God.
Have I? Honest to God,
wink,
I have no idea.
You gotta wink. You gotta wink.
I can't wink. Fun fact, you get 2 for the day from Abe. But I think it's a difficult question to answer. Is it one that I think about? Yeah, absolutely. Has dating been something that I've tried in the past? Absolutely. Has it gone well? No. So
the rest of this episode is just a deep dive into all of your dating failures.
Yeah, let's start with number one. And do we have time to get through like however many that is? So shout out to all y'all who know what I'm
Abe, I have
talking
a question for you. Have you dated more people or dropped out of more colleges?
Oh.
Which is more?
Well,
I know the number's got to be 3.
I can only
or
count
fewer.
to 3. So the top 3 colleges are on that list, and the top 3 X's are on that list.
Okay, so they're about even as far as you can tell.
All of you X's out there, you can decide which ones are the top.
But seriously though, right? You said that this is something that you've obviously thought about.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Because I mean, it does get to a point where it's like, well, why keep going at it with I'll say a high school perspective where it's just dating because, whatever, or kind of a college perspective where, sometimes it works out. But again, it's still kind of dating to just date for the sake of dating. So
when you say high school perspective, do you mean dating for the sake because
just dating
because it feels good to have a girlfriend?
Yeah,
right?
just dating to date. Like it's a social thing. Like climbing the social ladder. Like I have a girlfriend.
Sure. Okay.
I mean, everybody went to high school. You know how it is. Like if you didn't have a girlfriend, then it's like points lost against you. So kind of getting out of that mindset and being like, all right, well, let's not just date for these weird social constructs. Let's date for longevity and for the goodness of building a family and going on to that. So it's definitely something to think about and getting into that mindset. But I have no idea. I mean, it's a crazy world out there. People are crazy out there, and I keep meeting them all. So.
But you took the quiz, right? You said
I did take the quiz. I did take the dating booklet quiz. I forget what the URL is, but I'm sure somebody here knows it.
I bet Father knows it. What is the quiz we keep referencing?
You can get it on Wired to Love, the podcast, and there you have the podcast sessions that unpack the dating themes and also my emotional chastity books themes. And it just goes through. You click on the link and you answer. You answer a series of kind of observations about 6 behaviors of and you gauge yourself. And then you're also encouraged, I don't know if you had the time to do that, but you're also encouraged to ask a trusted friend, to do the test for you. So you not only have your results and what you think you're ready for, but also someone who knows you fairly well to also gauge you. And between those 2 final scores, you should have a decent idea of what, where you are.
And that'd be another obstacle for me to overcome. A friend that knows me super well to take that quiz. So, no, I did take the quiz. It was good. Did not ask a friend who knows me super well because it was like 10 at night and I'm not calling somebody up that late.
You get to it.
Exactly.
Patrick and Teresa, you took the quiz too. Just what were your thoughts on it? I mean, was there any revelations? Was it like, I don't know.
Yeah. So according to the quiz, it was very reflective, honestly. I was like, some of those, I kind of went to, those BuzzFeed quizzes where it's like a picture and a word. I was like, it's going to be short and sweet, something like that. But then it started getting kind of deep into again, self-reflection. I was like, okay, yeah, dating is serious. Like this makes sense. I really I think it's good because it really brought up a lot of thoughts came up for me where am I taking care of myself? Am I in the right spot to be able to give of myself to another in a relationship? Because ultimately, if you're dating for the reason for marriage, you want to be willing to sacrifice, some things you'd be able to willing to sacrifice for the good of the other. So, that was just kind of we're going through the questions and answering them, how I felt about certain of them, was okay, this, I hope my future spouse, or if that's what God's calling to me, is doing the same thing, because I feel like when I'm if I'm going to date, I want to be able to give to that person.
Did you find someone else to take it, that might be another thing you guys could do. I just think it's really helpful to get another perspective, because we either beat ourselves up, like we're horrible, or we're next to life's bread, we're rock stars. Yeah. And it's not quite that way. Someone else's perspective really helps us get balance.
Right. I'm not gonna lie, I took it twice just to see if my
if you were off the first time.
If I was off the first time, I took it once at late at night, and then the other time I didn't ask anyone, but I took it early, in the day, and then I ended up getting a little bit lower the second time than the first time. So I was like, okay, so maybe there is more work to do than I initially thought after the first result. So.
Right. I think one of the things about the dating booklet is that the thesis is not that dating is recreational. That's the problem with much of the dating app world. It's just one more fun thing to do, right? Versus no, this is another human being that I'm going to be with, right? That I'm getting to know. And that's kind of a pretty mysterious and serious thing, right?
Sure.
So I got to know myself in order to give myself to this other person who deserves the best. So it's kind of it has a lot to do with human dignity and human respect and honoring the other versus what's in it for me, transactional love, all of the things. Unfortunately, we're so sucked into, which is damaging to authentic love.
Yeah, I like how you use transactional love. We're talking about the utilitarian aspect of dating, right? I think you said sort of the high school perspective of dating. And when I had somebody who said very succinctly one time, they said you have to keep in mind that when you date somebody, the only ends are heartbreak or marriage, right? And you need to put it in perspective of that, right? That you're either somebody's going to get their heart broken or you guys are going to be married and sacramentally bound to each other till you die, right? So kind of a big deal. And while you guys were talking, I was trying to think of any recent media thing, movies, television, whatever, that showed dating in that sort of positive light. And I was having a hard time coming up with it, but yeah. I don't know, Patrick, you're kind of quiet over there. What are you thinking?
No, I mean, I think that the way you try to build your relationship with Christ, I think mimics kind of how you're going to treat other people, right? So if you're on the journey to get to know Christ, you'll learn way more about yourself, and the things you've learned on that spiritual journey, you'll be able to bring into your dating pool with the other person. And it's essentially the same thing. And then it's important to remember that it is a relationship, right? So we have this view that it's just like two people that come together but still exist as two people when it's two people joining together to form one body, right? And so it's so it's just a relationship takes work, right? There's we all have our brokenness to each other, and it's learning how to kind of tug and pull with each other to be able to learn how you can be able to love each other and grow from that instead of just using each other for what we were saying, like recreational uses and stuff.
I like how you said you talked about your relationship with Christ, how you're sort of fighting for that relationship with Christ is going to be reflective in some way of your relationship with another human being. That was great. Last year at our high school retreat for my high school, they did a big Lenten retreat, and one of our founders got up and she gave a great talk on emotional chastity, and it ended with half the kids in the high school breaking up. There were tears. It kind of ruined the rest of the retreat, actually, from just, in a good way. I mean, it was these guys that were all of a sudden being really reflective on, oh my goodness, our relationship and what are we doing? And are we making, are we doing this for the right reasons? And it wound up with a lot of tears and everything afterwards. And one thing I would really like to discuss, and you guys are kind of in it, and so I'm more curious about Father's sort of view from the outside, are what are the biggest pitfalls that you're seeing in the modern dating world, whatever you want to call it? What big mistakes are taking place right now that are making it difficult to have an authentic relationship that's not one of recreation or one of use or any of those things? What are you seeing a lot of?
Yeah, I think I already referred to it, and it's just the impulsiveness of the culture, and when we don't reflect, fundamentally what we are as human beings is we're reflective human. Animals don't reflect.
Right.
They're impulsive.
Sure.
They're reactive. They follow instincts, right? Now, we have some of that in us as well. We know that. But what makes us distinct from the animal world is our rationality. And this is what's in crisis. We're not spending time pondering, the whole idea of just good music or, beauty or, good music or getting into the mountains in North Georgia or wherever. Exposing yourself to truth, goodness, and beauty awakens in you depth, awakens in you a yearning, a desire for more, transcendence, whatever you want to call it. You don't have to put religious terms around it. It's a very fundamentally human reality. And that has been in crisis.
Right.
Because what we have is, in fact, the animal behavior dominating the human behavior. So the calling, the dating book is really just to call people back to fundamentally what their purpose is. They're meant to be reflected.
But what does that look like practically? Johnny and Susan, let's say, are dating, right? Johnny and Susie love each other, right? Did you have something on that, Ben?
Yeah, well, I think it brings it back to a previous podcast we had where you mentioned how you originally didn't like coffee, but slowly getting into it and learning about it, you kind of developed this sense of, and you started liking it. It's the same thing, going back to Father's point is, you know, if you're impulsive about something, you just go for what feels good or what tastes good. But if you really reflect upon something and learn about it, you start kind of like polishing up and improving your taste upon something, whether it's music or people. So you might start off listening to kind of like the modern day pop music or something like that. But when you become a guitar player, for example, and you start learning the ins and outs of the guitar, you might end up listening to some like instrumental flamenco or like something else, depending on how you're growing with that relationship. And it's the same thing with a human being, right? Like you have to go beyond. And it's hard to think clearly when all you're doing is doing the things that feel good, right? Because then that's all you're focused on. But if you wait for that, you have more of a clear vision of how to learn or experience that person.
It just seems so. It just seems so incredibly difficult with the landscape that's there to do that, though. I mean, the thing with coffee that you just brought up, I was making an analogy about how I wanted to like poetry, but I did not like poetry. So I started making myself read poetry. And at the same time, I had started making myself drink black coffee for utility, right? And over time, I got to where I liked black coffee. And over time, I got to where I was really starting to have opinions about poetry and getting into it and enjoying the time I was spending, reading whatever it was. And it was such almost a painful process of changing sort of the direction. And I think it's that times 100 when you're dealing with romantic relationships, right, in your heart.
Absolutely, because our human attractions are normal and they're good, and God had wired us that way. But we live in a culture that is constantly in our face to go for it, versus no, hold on a second, maybe I need to reflect on this. So I think one of the things that's amazing about Lent, for example, is the power of fasting. When people step back from their normal behaviors, they somehow discover this. This inner strength that they didn't realize that they have.
Right.
And that's what I would propose to people is maybe pull yourself out of the dating world and don't go into the apps. Take a little bit of a break and cut yourself a little space. And, everybody's into self-improvement. Everybody wants to eat well and exercise. Well, why don't you do that in your relationships? Why don't you do that in exercising habits of love just with your own family and friends and not get romantic? Right. Let's just work on yourself. I think there's a lot of truth to that. And I think there's a lot of people who are actually trying to do that in their own way in other sectors of their life,
Yeah, as somebody who was a serial monogamist for a long time, I had this dawning realization, right? I was just sort of going from girlfriend to girlfriend to girlfriend. And I realized, this is because I am desperately trying, I need this emotional crutch of another person for totally selfish reasons. What are you going to say, Teresa?
Well, I think what you guys were saying, I think is really important, especially because in my friend group, I've been in college for 3 years, and I've seen a lot of my friends get into relationships, get out of relationships, and I've seen friends who've never been in a relationship the time we've been in college. And especially since we're all good friends, I don't think there's any bad blood in between anybody, but just seeing our friends who are in relationships and some of them are getting married, and it's already, and the friends that I've had conversations with where we even haven't had a serious relationship in college, everyone's oh, what's wrong with me? How am I not, they're about to graduate college and I haven't, met my spouse yet and everything. And it's sad. We all have those moments of
self-doubt
and despair, but just the fact that it's a common thing, and then it's not just a month, it's months that people are in this
unlovable because no one's paying attention to me.
Right. And it's I can't say that I'm not guilty of it itself, but it's I know that there's a realization we're called to be in a relationship, probably ultimately at first with God. Our relationship should be secure with Him, and we will have those relationships with others, with, you know, people of the same sex, or like, not like romantic, but just, you know, good relationships with other people. And it's not solely like our satisfaction, our happiness is not all going to be centered on like our significant other, you know, like our lives have more meaning than just a romantic relationship. Not saying that it's wrong to have one. I believe there are important relationships and holy relationships out there, but it's sad, like for me, like it's like the fact that I'm sure you're like, not just my friend group, there's lots of other college kids, high school students that are going through this, like seeing other people and those who are not in relationships, like, what's wrong with me? And in reality, it's like, you need to do that self-reflection, you know?
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I think what your point is really important is that, you know, love today is equated with sex.
Sure.
Right? Like, if I'm not in a relationship and if it's not ending in sex, something's wrong with me, with the relationship, versus, no, I need to learn to mature and grow in all types of relationships, family relationships, friendships, and that actually fosters healthy romantic relationships where you're respecting the other and not using the other. And so we feel forced into these relationships that we're not even ready for because of the culture, the air that we're breathing in, versus let's just pause. Let me work on having some good guy friends or good girlfriends, or, you know, work on my family relationships that are probably not what they should be. Right? Most of our family relationships need investment in there, and we haven't done that. Yeah. So I think if you start working on that, you'll be in a much better place to invest in a romantic relationship at the right time.
Yeah.
Society really puts a lot of pressure on like us to be like in a relationship, and it's like, come on, like.
But it's not even a real relationship. It's just a pressure to, I don't know, just for the mere fact of enjoyment. Because if it was an actual, that's why the other thing is like society or the world tells us that we should wait to have a relationship. But on second reflection, that doesn't even make sense, because why would you wait? Because then you have a shorter time to build a true beautiful relationship with somebody else. Like if you're married I know that, you know, it varies for everybody and God's timing is different for everybody. But if you're purposely waiting and you're 50 and you get married, right, you only have maybe 30 or so years to be with that person, whereas somebody that got married at 20 has been with that person maybe 60 or more years and knows them beyond anyone else. So it's also like this pressure for just, once again, this like hedonistic tendency, like, you know, just have fun, use other people, do that, and at some point when you're ready, then you can kind of keep doing that, but you just lock it with one other person.
Yeah, the disposable culture that we've heard about, right? And we bring that into our relationships, and clearly it's not a healthy thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. The word disposable being thrown in there to apply to relationships.
Yeah,
sure.
There's a very prevalent term that started becoming more popular, which is the situationship, which is like just two people just talking and enjoying each other's company. Like you start become really good friends, and then you start talking every day and FaceTiming, and you haven't called it a relationship, but it's basically a relationship. And then so what's been happening is, once you say, okay, well, where are we? You know, it's been 4 months of this where you're basically in a relationship. The other person chickens out at that point.
Right.
Like they've gotten so used to the situationship that they're not ready for the relationship.
I was talking to some college kids not too long ago, college young men and women, and they were explaining the concept of, you know, quote unquote talking, right?
Yeah.
And how,
so dumb.
Yeah, and they were trying to articulate it, and I get it. I understand the idea is, you're in a relationship, but it's not official, and you're trying not to put pressure on yourselves. But it was just this weird disposable, I like that word, concept of, well, I don't want to take this seriously. Like, I'm hanging out with this person. Yeah, maybe I'm kissing this person. Maybe I'm whatever, but it's not real because I don't want to be a part of that.
I'd like to speak to that because I think there's something that we're touching that's very... So we live in a culture, right? We live in American culture that literally 0.3% of the entire planet has what we have.
Right.
We are so privileged.
Right.
And we don't know what struggle is. We don't know what suffering is. We don't know what sacrifice is. So we know relationships demand that.
Right.
And so the talking and the situationship is all of this, I'm afraid that this isn't going to work out.
It's avoidance.
I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt. And because I'm not used to getting hurt, I don't want to get hurt. I've protected myself from getting hurt. So it's this putting off of an investment that every relationship demands until, I don't know, someone wakes up or someone, I turn out to be 35 and single, or it's a
somebody else
strange,
does it.
It's a strange, or somebody else does it. Strange situation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. What you got, Abe?
No, I think that's really good. I mean, kind of going back and touching on the points made by Patrick and really everybody here, just definitely the stressors that society and just the world puts on to people to date. It really causes a lot of issues, a lot of anguish within the dating scene. I mean, everybody, I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to, that I've heard from, that they're sitting there stressed about finding the one. And in that stress, they then go out and they're just going on millions of dates. They're going and talking to millions of different people, just trying to, shift through all this as fast as they can to find the one. And I think in doing that, it really hurts it more than it helps, because you're not taking that time to be self-reflective. You're not taking that time to just let things happen organically.
Well, and you're not growing in the areas of your life that you could be growing in, because you're focusing on this thing that's not in your life right now, right? None of us here are perfect Christians, right? None of us here are perfect Catholics. None of us here have perfect relationships with everybody in our life. But if we're stressing about this romantic relationship that we want, sometimes, I mean, not for totally selfish reasons, but that's a part of it, right? I think there is some comfort in there, and I think it's important that we say that out loud. But if we're stressing on that and neglecting all these things that we have control over in the here and now, it's so unhealthy and is making it harder for us to have that romantic relationship eventually and it be successful. So those are my thoughts. I think we're getting close to time. We're going to go over cards here in a minute.
Yeah.
But because I went to the Harvard School of Segways, I was thinking about this while we were talking about relationships. You know what a relationship is kind of like, Abe?
What is it like?
It's kind of like when you subscribe to a YouTube channel.
That is commitment right there. Yeah. That is a lot of commitment.
That will do it.
And with that in mind, if you are listening right now, if you're watching us on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you're hearing this right now, please make sure that you subscribe, you like us, you leave us a 5-star review if you can, and feel free to comment down below. And Abe will personally answer any question.
Every single one. They won't be spelled correctly. There'll be a lot of typos. None of it will really be prevalent to what you ask.
And it will only be 3-word responses.
And it will only be 3-word
but
responses.
He will answer.
There will be one.
So please go ahead, like, subscribe. I think we just decided we're not going to say please anymore. We're demanding it, right?
Yeah.
You have to. It's a requirement. Like and subscribe.
Sorry to say, but you got to do it.
Yeah. Otherwise, Abe will be sad.
Now, something that Abe, myself, would like to know as another good segue person is going back to the dating booklet. I know that we talked about the quiz and we kind of touched on the numbers. When somebody goes and takes that quiz and they get that number at the end, how do they kind of interpret that? How can they look at that number that they get at the end and apply that to their life?
Yeah, so what I basically do is I encourage people to take the test. I take a test individually, swap it with a buddy or a friend, and then after that period is over, you talk about it. And you talk about what you're weakest in. And interesting enough, out of the many, many people that I've done this with over the last years, the weakest area that most people score lowest on is emotional maturity. Back to what we were saying, the impulsiveness of our culture. So I would just start there. And I think the number that we put on in the booklet is 75. So if you score under 75, that probably means I probably not. It's best for me not to get too involved. If you're 75 to 85, okay, you got some good things going on. It doesn't mean that you got it all figured out. And even if you're 100 plus, there'll be things that are weaker on that quiz that you can work on. We all got things to work on. And I think that's the whole idea. It should be a motivation to self-improvement and to making shooting to mature yourself in that area of self-gift love so that when that moment, that person comes your way, then you'll be ready for it.
Gotcha. Awesome. So 83 is pretty good to get a good score.
Just throw out a random number.
Just wanted to know. So for everybody out there, my dating credit karma number's pretty good. So maybe a little bit confused here and there, but take note.
Yeah, this show is really just a long con to make sure that Abe one day finds a spouse. Yeah. All right. Well, this was great. I feel like we could do another hour on it, but we are at time. We're going to go overtime for sure. But I want to make sure that we hit the loaded questions because it would not be an episode of Honest to God without loaded questions, Junior. Mm-hmm. So let's start with Abe over there. Pick one and answer it for us. And your answer has to include the Pillsbury wampum cans.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. So, if you owned a restaurant, what type of food would you serve? So, my restaurant would be called Wampum Cans. And it would come out, these foods would be put out on a silver platter to you. And it would be the unopened Wampum Cans. Now, here's the thing. Some would be perfect pressurized, some would be under-pressured, others over-pressured. So you never know what you're going to get in the Wampum Cans at Wampum Can Restaurant.
I like that.
So some may just not really pop, some may pop perfect, some may just explode.
Literally explode.
Like a pipe bomb, like they are, because they are pipe bombs.
Once again, this episode of Honest to God is brought to you by Pillsbury Wampum Cans. I don't think I can say Pillsbury because that's an actual trademark name, but Wampum Cans in general.
Who knows?
That might be bleeped out. We'll see. Teresa, what you got?
Ooh, these questions are hard to choose from. I guess what would make the world a better place? I would say probably Father's book.
No, it has to involve Pillsbury Wampum Cans.
Me too. Okay.
No, not everybody, just you.
Okay. Okay, so then I guess I have to change my question.
No. Same question.
Same question.
What would make the world a better place? And it just has to include the Wampum Cans.
The Wampum Cans, Pillsbury Cans would probably make the world a better place because everyone would be fed.
Okay.
I would argue taking them out would be better, but that's just old Abe here. So
that's
maybe
great.
That too.
All right, Father, what you got?
I'm gonna pick what is your worst habit, and that's my peanut butter habit. Oh, peanut butter. Oh,
I love peanut butter.
That gets me into trouble, but I love peanut butter. So
as far as habits go, that's a solid one.
Is that a solid one?
I think so.
But it says worst habit.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like, if you have to have the one you struggle with the most, that's the most detrimental, and it's peanut butter.
Okay.
I mean,
that's fair.
Yeah. You're not smoking 2 packs of Marlboro Reds every day. It's peanut butter. It's great. Patrick.
What is my favorite dessert? I would have to go with tiramisu.
Okay, that's solid. I'm
a wampum
banana
can.
pudding. Yeah, I was in a wampum can.
It doesn't come in a wampum can.
I'm going to go Ben before you. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
We're just going to mix it up today.
Let's see. There's a lot of good ones on here.
This is you going before me. I wanted to go first.
I thought did you want to go first?
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you're the boss.
I thought you said me go first.
No, I got a good one.
Okay, go for it.
And so these questions were made for elementary school students. So I picked this. The other ones were a little spicy. And I'm going to pick, what would your parents never let you do? And Ben and I, 2 days ago, went skydiving. It was a blast.
Yep. It was a lot of fun.
And I purposefully did not tell my mom until I was done. And I called my mom later that day and I explained what she had done. And she said exactly what I told you. She said, John Henry would have paid you back and would have paid you money not to go skydiving. So my parents would never let me go skydiving.
Did you tell her that you went ahead and bought the return?
I did not. I didn't tell her that. Yeah,
does she listen to the show?
I'm pretty sure she does. She's our one Qatari listener.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's her.
That's a joke. My mom does not live in Qatar. All right, Ben, what you got?
All right, mine is, if you could snack on one thing every day, what would you choose? John Henry, this should be a pretty easy one to guess. What do you think it is?
Those horrible oatmeal raisin cookies that you made.
I would not say it would be those oatmeal raisin cookies. Those were very, very mediocre. No, I'd say it was oatmeal raisin cookies in general.
Oh, okay.
The ones that you buy at Walmart. Those are pretty good.
So how do they keep them soft?
I know. It's great.
Yeah,
or something I found recently are Cheez-It Grooves, specifically the white cheddar Cheez-It Grooves.
Okay.
Like the perfect chip / cracker.
Every time I find something like that I love, they always discontinue it.
I know, it's the worst.
These are the serious issues that we address here. But no, thank you guys all for being here today. That was a blast. I wish we could keep doing it. We could definitely do another couple of hours on this conversation. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. You listen to AM 1160 The Quest, Atlanta's Catholic Radio. This is Honest to God. Producer Ben,
signing off.
Over and out.